Welcome back to the deep dive. I was actually stuck in traffic this morning.
Oh yeah, the gridlock was terrible today.
Right, just brutal. But I was sitting there watching this really sleek sports car weave through the stalled cars, and it got me thinking about the whole concept of the starting line.
The classic life is a race metaphor.
Exactly. We love this idea, right? Everyone lines up, the gun goes off, and may the best person win. But the more you look at the actual mechanics of success, the more that analogy just completely falls apart.
It is a comfortable myth, but statistically, it's nonsense. In a literal race, the stagger is measured in meters. In life, the stagger is measured in zip codes, bank accounts, and, psychological safety nets.
Exactly. Some people are just born on third base. They have the wind at their back before they even learn to walk.
Right.
But then you have these outliers, the people who start miles behind the line, barefoot on a gravel track, and somehow they still break the tape.
And that is exactly why today's deep dive is going to be a little different. We are analyzing a narrative account titled "The Boy Who Refused to Give Up."
Which I have to admit sounds a bit like a bedtime story.
It really does. It sounds like a fable you would read to a toddler. But looking at the actual text, this is a gritty, very granular case study in behavioral psychology.
That is exactly how I read it too. We aren't just looking at this as a simple biography of a boy named Daniel. We are treating this as a manual on the mechanics of defying the odds.
Because the narrative doesn't just tell us that he succeeded. It gives us a blueprint for how he essentially hacked his own psychology to do it.
And that distinction is vital for us today. Our mission here is to unpack the specific mindset shifts and those practical, almost military-grade habits Daniel used.
Right, because we usually only see the before and after photos of success.
Yeah, and the after photo is boring. It's just a guy in a nice suit.
Exactly. The real gold we want to mine today is in the messy middle. We need to look at how he went from a house with a leaky roof to a position of serious influence.
So let us establish the baseline. To understand the trajectory here, you really have to understand the friction he was fighting against. The narrative introduces us to Daniel in a very small, dusty town.
And we aren't talking about, struggling artist poverty here. We are talking about deep structural scarcity.
Yeah, extreme resource deprivation. The text describes the physical environment so vividly. A simple house where the roof is, more of a suggestion than a shield. It leaks every single time it rains.
His father is a manual laborer, carrying heavy loads out under the hot sun, basically destroying his body for pennies.
And his mother is in the market, hustling small goods from dawn to dusk just to survive.
But what really stood out to me wasn't just the lack of money. It was the visibility of the inequality.
Oh, absolutely. Kids are incredibly perceptive sociologists. They notice status instantly.
Right. Daniel is walking to school in these shoes that are literally falling apart. He is holding torn notebooks, and he is watching other kids in crisp, clean uniforms carrying brand new books.
That visual gap creates a massive psychological weight.
It is what psychologists call the bandwidth tax. When you are that poor, a huge percentage of your cognitive processing power is it's focused on survival and shame.
You have way less brain power left over for actual learning because you are worried about the holes in your shoes or, where your next meal is coming from.
And the narrative points out that this wasn't just some internal feeling Daniel had. It was reinforced by the town itself.
Right. There was this prevailing sentiment. The quote is, "Children from poor families stay poor forever."
That is a fascinating and terrifying detail. It's a social script. The town had essentially written the ending of Daniel's life before he had even really started living it.
It is a totally deterministic view of the world, that your origin is your destiny, period.
Which makes his reaction to it so interesting. Most people would just internalize that script. They would say, well, everyone says I am stuck, so I guess I am stuck.
But Daniel had this, let us call it an immune response to that idea.
He really did. Mm-hmm. And this brings us to the first major symbol in the text, the small dim lamp.
I highlighted this exact section. It is late at night, the whole town is asleep, and Daniel is sitting under this weak light, rereading the same pages over and over.
Why do you think he was doing that? Rereading the same pages,
Well, the text pretty clearly implies he wasn't naturally gifted. He wasn't one of those genius kids who glances at a textbook and just memorizes it. He had to grind for every inch.
Exactly. But I think there is a deeper layer here, too. That lamp created a kind of world within a world.
Oh, I like that.
In the darkness, under that tiny cone of light, the poverty of the house disappeared. The poor kids' stay, poor script disappeared. It was just him and the information. It was the only place where he had actual agency.
And in that little bubble of agency, he makes this massive promise. He tells his mother, "One day I will build you a big house and you will never have to worry again."
And look at the mother's reaction in the text.
Yeah.
It is heartbreakingly realistic.
Yeah, she smiles, but her eyes are full of fear.
Because she isn't looking at a future CEO. She is looking at her son, setting himself up for massive disappointment. She knows the statistical probability of that promise coming true is near zero.
She is trying to protect him from the heartbreak of hope.
Exactly, which is a perfect transition to the second phase of this case study, the crash.
If this were a cheesy Hollywood movie, this is the exact moment where we would get the montage of him getting straight A's and winning the science fair.
But reality hits back.
It hits back hard. This is why I really appreciate this account. It doesn't gloss over the failure. Daniel reaches a crucial level in his schooling. He has been putting in all those hours under that dim lamp.
And he fails a major exam.
It is the absolute nightmare scenario. You do everything right, you work harder than everyone else around you, and you still fall flat on your face.
And to make it infinitely worse, the external feedback loops confirm his darkest fears.
Right. He has a teacher, an educator who is supposed to be a mentor, tell him, maybe school is not for everyone. You should consider working instead.
That is a crushing moment of confirmation bias for the town's narrative. The teacher's essentially saying, "See, we told you. You reached for the sun and you got burned. Get back in your lane."
And honestly, it almost worked. The narrative says Daniel sat outside in the dark, entirely ready to quit.
He was calculating the logistics of dropping out to take small labor jobs, just like his friend.
He was minutes away from accepting the script.
But then we get the intervention. And it doesn't come from some high-paid career counselor or a rich benefactor. It comes from his father, the laborer.
I love this scene so much. The father doesn't yell at him. He doesn't shame him for failing the test. He just sits next to him in the dark and drops this incredible line.
"Son, life will knock you down many times. But the only real failure is when you decide to stay down."
Let us pause on that for a second. Failure is a decision. That sounds a bit like a motivational poster, but let us look at it behaviorally.
Right. Most people view failure as an event. I failed the test, therefore I am a failure.
But the father reframes failure as an action. I am choosing to stop moving.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a minute. It is really easy to say, don't stay down when you have options. When you are deeply poor and you fail, staying down sometimes feels like the only rational financial choice. Was Daniel's dad actually being realistic?
That is a fair pushback. In a vacuum, maybe it sounds a bit idealistic, but in that specific moment, the father was trying to break the psychological paralysis.
He wasn't saying ignore the financial reality.
Exactly. He was saying don't let this single event dictate your entire identity. It was about separating the outcome, which was the bad grade, from the process, which was his effort.
And it worked. Daniel didn't just feel better, he operationalized that advice. He treated it like a literal software update for his brain.
Right. And this is where we see the transition from just dreaming to actual systemizing.
The very next morning, he wakes up before sunrise. He looks at the sky, makes a promise to himself, and then he starts a habit that I think is the absolute linchpin of his success.
He writes his goals in a notebook. I have a list right here. It is very stark. 1, help my family. 2, finish school with high grades. 3, go to university. 4, inspire others.
And he didn't just write them once and toss the notebook in a drawer. He read them aloud every single day.
This is classic cognitive restructuring, isn't it?
It is. By reading those goals aloud daily, he is actively stimulating his reticular activating system, the RAS.
That is the part of your brain that filters information, right?
Exactly. Like when you buy a red car and suddenly you see red cars everywhere on the highway.
No, right, yeah.
He was programming his brain to filter out the noise of poverty and the noise of the doubters and to scan his environment only for opportunities that match those 4 specific goals. He was literally hacking his own attention span.
And once his attention shifted, the results shifted. His grades went up, teachers started to notice, and that brings us to the catalyst, Mr. Hassan.
Every hero's journey needs a guide, but Mr. Hassan is fascinating because he is the complete antithesis of the previous teacher.
Right. He looked at Daniel's background and didn't see a liability. He saw a fuel source.
His core philosophy was, your background does not matter, your mindset does.
So Mr. Hassan introduces this idea of a scholarship program for talented students from poor backgrounds. But even with the new grades and the new morning routine, Daniel freezes up.
The imposter syndrome kicks in hard.
He thinks that is for rich kids. That is for students from the big city schools.
This is a classic case of self-handicapping. He was terrified to apply because if he applied and got rejected, it would definitively confirm he wasn't good enough.
But if he didn't apply at all, he could always protect his ego and say, well, I could have gotten it if I tried.
Precisely. But because of that daily programming, reading those 4 goals every morning, he pushed through the fear. He wrote the application, and he was brutally honest about his struggle.
And that honesty became his competitive advantage. He stopped trying to hide his background and started using it as tangible evidence of his resilience.
Then comes the email. The narrative says his hands were shaking so hard he could barely click it open.
And when he sees the word accepted, the reaction of his parents is what really got me. It says they hugged him and finally believed the dream was possible.
That is such a heavy sentence, isn't it? Finally believed.
Yeah.
It implies that up until that exact moment, they were supporting him purely out of love, not out of actual belief. They needed that external validation, that stamp of approval from the big world to let themselves truly hope.
So he gets the golden ticket. He is off to university. And usually this is where the story wraps up. Freeze frame, high five, roll the credits.
But in this account, this is where the real psychological war actually begins.
We can call this phase the discipline of adaptation, because getting into the room is one thing, feeling like you actually belong at the table is something else entirely.
The culture shock described in the text is visceral. He walks onto this pristine campus and sees classmates with cars, expensive laptops, designer clothes.
And here he is, struggling with the academic language, struggling with the technology.
It is a massive sociological dislocation. He is lacking what Pierre Bourdieu called cultural capital.
Meaning, he knows the academic material, potentially even better than his peers.
But he doesn't know the hidden social codes. He doesn't know how to dress, how to speak the casual slang, how to navigate the invisible social hierarchy of a university. He feels small. He feels incredibly lonely.
The text literally mentions he felt like he didn't belong. That is imposter syndrome in its absolute purest form. And most people in that exact situation retreat. They isolate themselves.
But Daniel did something crucial here. He realized that motivation, that fiery, passionate feeling he had back under the dim lamp, was completely gone.
He was exhausted. He was working part-time jobs just to survive. He was stressed out his mind.
And this is where he learned the most critical lesson of this entire deep dive. Discipline is stronger than motivation.
I feel like we hear that a lot on, flashy social media posts, discipline over motivation. But what did that actually look like for him in practice?
It is the difference between feeling first action and action first feeling. Most people wait until they feel motivated to sit down and study.
Which means they never study.
Exactly. Daniel realized that waiting for inspiration was a trap. He treated his mind like a muscle. He forced the action.
Going to the library, joining those study groups, even when he felt like a total outsider, regardless of his internal emotional state.
He also curated his input again. The narrative says he started aggressively consuming content on personal growth, listening to speeches, reading success books late at night.
He was actively managing his environment. He knew that if he let the silence take over, the imposter syndrome would win.
So he drowned it out with voices of success. He built a psychological scaffolding around his own mind to hold himself up.
And it paid off. He didn't just survive university, he thrived. He graduates with top honors, he gets offers from major companies, the whole 9 yards.
And finally, he fulfills the childhood promise. He builds his mother that big house.
He changed the trajectory of his entire genetic line. He secured the absolute financial safety of his family. By every standard metric of society, he had arrived.
And here's the twist that elevates this story way above a standard success narrative. The text says he felt incomplete.
This is what positive psychologists call the arrival fallacy, right?
Yes. We have this deep delusion that once we reach a specific goal, the house, the job, the money, we will enter this permanent, glowing state of happiness.
But we don't. We just reach a new baseline.
Daniel got to the very top of the mountain and realized the view just wasn't enough.
So he redefined success. He realized it wasn't about accumulation at all. It was about purpose.
He looked back down the mountain. He realized that the struggle itself was the meaning. So he started mentoring young students who were exactly where he used to be.
I love the message he gives them. He doesn't sugarcoat it and tell them it is going to be easy. He tells them, your situation is not your destiny. Your discipline is.
He is handing them the exact keys to the vehicle he built from scratch. He is telling them, I cannot change where you start, but I can show you exactly how to steer.
He even started a foundation for scholarships and books. He essentially became the Mr. Hassan for the next generation.
Speaking of full circles, there is one final scene in the narrative that we absolutely have to talk about. It is the moment that gave me chills.
Daniel goes back to his old school.
The scene of the crime, so to speak.
He goes back and he actively seeks out that one teacher. The one who told him to quit after he failed that exam. The one who told him to go work in the fields.
Now, if this were me, I'm not going to lie, I would be so tempted to pull up in the nice car, flash the expensive watch, and do a whole Pretty Woman moment. Big mistake. Huge.
Oh, it is such a natural human impulse. We desperately want vindication. We want to rub their noses in our success.
But Daniel doesn't do that.
No. He approaches the teacher and he says something profoundly different. He says, "Thank you for doubting me. It made me stronger."
Thank you for doubting me. That is a level of maturity I am really not sure I possess.
It's not just maturity, though. It is anti-fragility.
Right. It is the concept that some things actually gain strength from disorder and resistance.
Daniel realized that if that teacher had been nice, if he had just patted him on the head and said, "Try again, buddy," but Daniel might have been comfortable. He might have settled for less.
So the doubt was actually a necessary ingredient in his success.
Precisely. The doubt was the resistance weight. You don't build muscle by lifting air. You build muscle by lifting heavy iron that pushes back against you.
That teacher was the heavy iron. Daniel used the teacher's skepticism as literal fuel to burn much brighter than he ever would have on his own.
That is such a powerful reframing of adversity. He turned an enemy into a personal trainer.
Exactly.
So we leave the narrative with Daniel in a high-rise office looking out at the city lights. He whispers, "We did it."
It is a beautiful moment of integration. The successful executive honoring the poor boy with the torn notebooks.
It is a demonstration that while we absolutely cannot control the hand we are dealt, the dusty town, the leaky roof, the empty bank account, we have absolute control over how we play the cards.
So let us wrap this up. We have dissected the journey from the dim lamp to the city lights. We have looked at the scarcity trap, the conscious decision to refuse failure, the mechanics of discipline, and the arrival fallacy.
If I had to boil this entire deep dive down to one single insight, it is the immense power of the quiet moments.
We tend to celebrate the graduation stage or the big job offer, but Daniel's success wasn't made there.
It was made in the silence late at night when he chose to read just one more page. It was made in the dark when he actively refused to accept his teacher's judgment.
It is a reminder to everyone listening right now. You might be in that quiet moment today.
You might be in the struggle phase where there is zero applause, zero validation, and just a whole lot of doubt.
And if you are, remember the father's logic. The only real failure is deciding to stay down. The story isn't over just because the current chapter is dark.
And I want to leave you with one final thought, something for you to really chew on for the rest of the week.
We spend so much time looking for cheerleaders, right? We want people to like and support our dreams.
But Daniel thanked the person who told him to quit.
It raises a highly provocative question. Who in your life is actually making you stronger by doubting you?
Instead of getting angry at the critics or the massive obstacles in your way, what if you viewed them as necessary resistance?
What if the person telling you that you can't is actually giving you the exact fuel you need to prove that you can?
Turn the doubt into fuel. That is the ultimate takeaway here. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the story of Daniel.
Keep refusing to give up.
We will see you next time.